Welcome, everybody, to the Slowtwitch podcast, episode 7. My name is Eric Wynn. I am brought to you by Ryan Heisler. Once again, I missed you, pal. I missed you.
Hello, sir. Good to talk to you.
You too. How you been? It's been a while.
It's been a very busy week and a half.
Yeah.
You know, with you overseas and me trying to hold down the fort and, work with Jordan on some technical stuff on Slowtwitch, and away we go.
Yeah, so. we did. I'm still in Germany. I don't get to come back to the States until tomorrow. So
I was going to say, when are you you actually flying home tomorrow, or do you have
tomorrow
an overnight?
Yeah, I stay tomorrow. I'll probably be joined again by Ben Canute, who is currently, I think he finally got in the air. He was supposed to fly out this morning at about 9, and United, partnered with Lufthansa, completely fucked up his air travel home. And they booked him on a plane that wasn't big enough to carry bikes. And so he got to the airport and they wouldn't let him check in because of his bike.
Because of the bike, yeah.
Yes. And this is after like 4 hours of being on hold yesterday, trying to get all of this stuff sorted out, because there was this apparently when he came over, there was this little tiny 5-minute bus ride that was attached to his itinerary when he landed. It takes you, I don't know where it took him, but he didn't get on it because even the flight attendant was just like, you don't need to take that. It's fine. And so he didn't. So it canceled his return itinerary without letting him know. And so when he went to check in, he couldn't find anything. So he spent 4 hours on hold, trying to get it sorted. He finally got it sorted. And then we went to the beer mile, which we'll get into it a little bit. Got it sorted. It got confirmation, everything. Showed up at the airport this morning. And tiny little plane, couldn't fit the bike. So now he's got an overnight stay in Frankfurt. But then the other plane that he was supposed to get on kept getting delayed. And so, I'll probably get to meet up with the American champ of Roth, Ben Canute, again tonight.
So that brings up 2 brief stories. One, during my time working for Rev 3, I flew down to do their race in Williamsburg and work that event, and it was United as well. Flew into Philadelphia and then wound up on a turboprop from Philadelphia to the airport. I forget which airport they had us flying into, but they had to take volunteers to take people off that plane because there were too many bikes.
Yeah.
And it was just this is clearly an air route that was not planned. And secondly, there's been that travel trend where you try to deadhead a multi-stop, where you book through and you just get off in whatever the connection city was as your actual destination. They're now canceling those flights because the airlines have finally figured out, wait, this isn't right, because they're cheaper than the actual direct routes. So
but this was
I'm sorry, Ben.
This wasn't a flight that he got off of. It was a transport bus. It was weird.
Part of the itinerary, though.
They totally. And it's not, I want to be clear. It's not per se United. It's Lufthansa, that airline, which I've always had bad experiences with. It's one of the reasons why I got rid of my United loyalty, was flying international. That's their big partner. And it was always a chaotic mess getting over to them. So anyways, but so I'm still in Frankfurt. I'm at a Moxie hotel by the airport. It's got it's a cool little vibe. Should be good. So Yeah.
So I mean, fingers crossed you don't run into any travel issues because
you just jinx me. You just jinx me. Next week we'll
having
talk about it. I won't though. I'm on Delta. I'm good. Yeah.
yeah.
Delta, not even Calion. It's literally like a Delta flight. It's good.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, a lot of things. I mean, we're going to obviously get into Roth quite a bit on this particular episode, but we do need to go over a lot of things that happened over the weekend, and you're going to be responsible because I don't
You
really
were a
know what
little
happened.
out of pocket.
Yeah, I followed Coeur d'Alene a lot just because you had the guys from PCC who all finished, by the way. They're all Ironman, at
That's
least the ones
awesome.
that I know of. Yeah, it was pretty rad. So
No, I mean, this is, if you look at the entirety of the calendar, this is probably the busiest weekend. Because you had Roth, you had multiple Ironman and Ironman 70.3 events, you had a World Triathlon Series race. Like, this was a crazy busy weekend overall. So, just touching base with Coeur d'Alene, number one, Sam Long, actually human. Um, Unfortunately, wound up not finishing in
human
CDA.
or crappy tires.
Well, both, but I mean, he can't win everything.
That's true. That's true.
Unlike Daniela Reef, who literally has not lost outside of.
Kona.
She's won every 140.6 she's done, with the exception of Hawaii, since 2016.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is an absurd stat.
I was fascinated to read that in your preview because I didn't know that.
But Chris Lieferman, Jody Robertson take the wins in Coeur d'Alene. Lieferman's putting himself
Good for
really kind of
Chris.
together here.
Good for Chris, man. I love that guy. He's so cool. He's just a good dude.
All-American top 5 for the men at CDA. With Lieferman, Matt Marquardt, Justin Metzler, Adam Fay, and Dylan Gillespie taking the top 5 slots there. On the women's side, Haley Chura led that race for a long time.
I know. I was, no offense to the winner, but I really wanted to see Haley come with a first place win.
But like, Haley, to her credit, hung tough. Like, usually, like, she swims and bikes the lights out of it, and then it's kind of a slow slide down the rankings on the run. And to her credit, took second place, relatively comfortably. And the other big story is Melanie McQuaid, 50 years old, third place.
Yeah. Dee Dee's best friend in the age group category.
I mean,
this is 50.
Unbelievable. So she's picked up her Kona slot, and that'll be kind of a really cool story to follow along. But just a really good overall race. Really tough conditions for a lot of age groupers. It got warm, as it usually does in CDA, and the terrain just ate some people up. I had some friends who were easily 60 to 90 minutes slower than they quote unquote normally are, just given the day that developed. So
now I saw a preview email from Ironman where they had extended the 70.3 for 3 years. Does that mean the full is done?
So as of right now, the only North American Ironman races that will qualify for 2024 Worlds taking place in the spring of 2024 are Ironman Texas in April, and then you jump all the way to Lake Placid in July.
No, but is Ironman Coeur d'Alene done?
So it's a 70 point. They extended an agreement for 3 years as a 70.3.
Yeah, so the Ironman distance is done, which
Yeah,
doesn't surprise me. I mean, they had less than 1,000 participants this year.
So it was weird with, you had a really fragmented calendar on the front end. With
the whole sport is fragmented right now. It's crazy. I'm finally starting to wrap my arms around, and I don't really know how to articulate it yet, but I'm thinking about it. on what's really happening with the sport, with participation at this point.
So,
because you're starting to see it not only within the age groupers, but you're starting to see it in the pros, and it's almost like what you just said earlier, where it was all American men at Coeur d'Alene, like that's who raced, and you're starting to see that where, really at the end of the day, like people are sticking around to their regions, like they're just not traveling for races.
Well, I mean, part of that's smart if you're trying to pick up, if under the Ironman qualification system right now, right? Like with the slots, like if you're weighing things up, and I mean, Roth, huge race, but you look at the prize purse for like 5th through 8th place, and you're talking, 1,000 euros, 800 euros, 700 euros,
Yeah,
right?
but it's always been that way. They pay appearance fees.
Sure, but you're also seeing people having to be more strategic in their decision making of like, where am I likely going to get paid, and B, where am I likely going to pick up the stuff that unlocks the rest of my race calendar?
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And
Speaking with Sky Munch about why she wasn't at Roth this year, she said she was too late to the appearance fee, and it just wasn't worth going over there for 5th or 6th, 7th place if she had a bad race. So that makes a lot of sense.
But just looking at the American calendar, right? So you had St. George this year, you had Tulsa this year, you had Coeur d'Alene, and then Placid. And from Texas to Lake Placid next year, you have 3 races that are getting pulled out. And part of that just comes down to there were too many events taking place at too many points in time. If you look at the back half of the year, we're probably oversaturated in the southeastern United States in that September to November timeframe, with Chattanooga and Maryland and Ironman Florida, 70.3 Augusta, another kind of big one. And so this is kind of the pivot I think Ironman's making, where they're going to have their sort of tentpole flagship events, of which Texas has proven itself to be one. Placid, if they can hold on to the contract, will be one. I think Sacramento, California, that race is sold out again. That will be one. And then they're going to do more of these pop-up races in big cities where they can get people to an event, have a unique experience, and then people are on to the next thing. And so like you look at, that's why their race in Jones Beach is sold out, but Atlantic City, which used to be kind of like the big draw in early September in that area, isn't sold out. Like everyone rushed to the new one.
Yeah, well, some of those cities, to your point, they're not worth going back a couple of times to, because they're not really special. They're not really unique. Like they're cool going once. Like Atlantic City, like I would never go back there again.
I mean that
no offense to
swim
the people that live there, but
I hate that swim. Like in the backwater of Bader Field, like it's if that swim were actually in the ocean, that race would be amazing.
Yeah,
because the run on the boardwalk's really cool.
It is.
You get covered in cigarette smoke the entire time, but the run on the boardwalk is really actually kind of cool. But that swim, like you come out and you're half brown and you chafe just the rest of the day. It's awful.
Yeah. We had some cancellations. What was up with Canada, man? Everything's burning up there.
Mont Tremblant 70.3, and then the relay event at the World Triathlon race in Montreal were both pulled off due to air quality index. The severe wildfires that are going on throughout Canada, Um, it was really interesting because all it took was the wind shifting direction overnight, and it went from an AQI in the low 50s to be above 175. Now, Ironman, like when they sent out their statement, they said that Ironman has their own standards with regard to air quality index. There's also really prescriptive stuff when it comes to Health Canada and with sporting events and everything else. So, although this situation was unique to, essentially venues that are roughly 40 miles apart at best, we have had a trend in the Northeast. Like Eagleman was really questionable as to whether or not it was going to go off a couple of weeks ago because we got trapped in that pocket of bad air for a long period of time. And so, really unfortunate for all of the athletes involved. There hasn't been word yet in terms of what Ironman respectively will do for those athletes who were unable to participate. Speaking from the past, right? Like when Tahoe took place in, I think it was 2013, there was cancellation due to wildfire. They offered, a transfer to any open event. I would suspect we'd see something somewhat similar here, but it was really shitty for everyone involved because it happened literally like 15 minutes before the race was supposed to start.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you also can't cancel that like that far in advance, right? Like air quality is really weird because, all it took was a shift in wind direction, right? Like if the wind hadn't shifted until 4 hours later, that race would have happened.
Yeah. Yeah. They were saying that there was ash on their bikes when they got
Yeah.
to, yeah.
And I mean, like, we had that air here at Tundra Division headquarters.
Well, that air was in New York like a month ago, and do you remember social media?
Yeah,
Like the
no.
whole
I mean,
world went nuts.
I'm roughly halfway between Montreal and New York City, and
Yeah.
it was just I'm not particularly sensitive to it. Like I could not go for a run outside,
Yeah.
at all.
Wow.
And like my house stank of smoke.
Yeah. So
It's like,
Ironman canceled that race because of weather, and then the PTO canceled their Collins Cup because why?
of a whole host of reasons, apparently.
That's a
In
bummer.
the worst kept secret in triathlon, no fourth event for the PTO in 2023. That includes the Collins Cup, which has been, if you think about it, that's really been their hallmark event since they got events up and off the ground.
In my opinion, it's literally the only thing that they do that's kind of cool, like different. I mean, the rest of them are just big prize money and big racing, but like the Collins Cup is actually like unique, right?
So that's where I thought the Collins Cup could get really kind of interesting because they want to model it off of golf's Ryder Cup, right?
Sure.
And it's hard to do with 3 teams
that are triathletes.
The thing that I thought they could do is really turn it into like a 3 or 4 day thing, right? Where you're not just putting 3 people head to head in their 100-kilometer distance race. Like, do some interesting team based stuff. Make it an event that people want to follow for multiple days. You have this venue where you have that opportunity.
But there's no way they could afford that. Like they're, and you can see it now where the PTO is starting to understand how much money it's spending doing these things. Like the bar was set so high. And so anything that they're going to do to change things and try to reel that in, they're going to get criticized for.
Yeah, no, and I mean, looking specifically at the email that they had distributed on this front, right? So they're saying, and I'm quoting, to support creating a more consistent calendar, the PTO will evolve its membership agreements to provide travel support and marketing contracts to the highest ranked athletes at PTO Tour events. Selections will be based on your PTO ranking, so there is no need to do anything different or change your current racing plans. Just perform to your potential as a professional. Um, and so, you know, what's really kind of interesting to me is they've really made the decision that they're going to go whole hog after the absolute top end of the sport, and everybody else can get bent.
Yep.
Um, and I don't necessarily fault them from a business case perspective on that front, right? But what that tells me is that they're really just another race production company at this point.
Imagine that. Imagine that. That's shocking.
And
That's shocking to learn that they didn't really care about all of the professional athletes like they claimed to for so many years.
well, I mean, the tough part is, right? Like there were areas of opportunity, and those areas of opportunity still kind of exist. Like the PTO could still exist as an athlete advisory board thing, and they could try to inject capital and essentially turn a couple of races into like triathlons majors, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
to use another golf analogy, like they could be the ones who decide, all right, Ironman Worlds, Ironman 70.3 Worlds, and let's say Roth, right? Like those are our new majors, right? Like this is where we're going to funnel all the money into. This is where we're going to funnel the broadcast dollars, and we've got to work on partnering with those two organizations to make that thing happen. They could. Um, I don't think that's the direction they're going to take. I think they are going to continue to try and partner with other race events like they did in Ibiza, like they're supposed to do for the US Open this year, where it's in conjunction with USAT Nationals, right? To try
Mm-hmm.
and build the atmosphere around the event. Because that was something they did well. But, from a product standpoint, like it's really just about like, let's get the biggest names in the sport and pay them more. Um, and hopefully that turns into something else, which is like that's the in the step 1, step 2, step 3 is the question marks, and step 4 is profit. Like we're on that question mark stage right now. Like
Yeah.
what's the how do we get there?
I hope they figure it out. Look, I don't particularly like the PTO. I'm not, I never really have. Um, just because I don't think people complain that Ironman are transparent. Like, to me personally, like the PTO is that times 1,000. But with that said, I want anybody that brings awareness and brings capital to the sport that we love to be successful and to stay. And so I
Yeah.
really hope that they can figure out a way to do that, because that benefits all of us. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've been around the block long enough to see people with deep pockets and big prize purses and hopeful media stuff, come into the sport a few times over. We
Mm-hmm.
worked for one of them, right?
Yeah. Yep.
um, and unfortunately, like every time they've made a splash, and then that puddle has effectively evaporated,
Yep.
right? And we we need, like we need ventures like this to succeed.
Yeah. We need
Like
slow growth. We need slow, steady growth.
sustainable growth.
That word is so overused these days, but sure.
I mean, I'm going to hit corporate bingo on this
There you
one.
go.
So
There you go. Okay.
I got to vomit it out of my system.
All right. Anything else happen over the weekend that we missed?
Well, Cam Wurf decided that he was going to race another Ironman.
What an absolute legend. Did you read his Instagram post race?
I did not.
Not quoting him because I didn't really memorize it, but essentially about a kilometer into the swim, he realized how fucked he was.
That's a good place to realize how fucked you are.
But he made a statement that echoed to me really, really well. And that was out of pure respect for the event and the race and everything. And I'm paraphrasing this. He sucked up and he finished the damn thing. And as he finished it, as he continued to go, his day it turned around. But guys like him and girls like him, athletes like him who they're in it for the pure love of sport and to see what their body can do. But ultimately it's a love and a passion for sport. And I just thought that was really cool that he could differentiate the difference between this day is going to suck, but I'm going to be okay. Or, I'm going to injure myself if I continue to do this. He knew that it was going to suck, but he was going to be okay. And he wanted to stop because he was so tired. But at the same time, he was like, no, I can't disrespect the gift that I've been given. I can't disrespect the sport. I signed up for this. I'm physically able to do it, even though it's going to mentally hurt. I'm going to go ahead and do this. So kudos to him, man. Like,
I was going to say,
ended up, what did he do? Second?
Something.
I think he was second. Oh, no, I think he was second when I saw towards the end. I think he finished fourth. He was like fourth overall.
I know Clement Mignon wound up winning.
Yes.
Like, good for him. Home turf thing, right?
It's the first French person to win in quite a long time. It was like 6 or 7 years. This is the difference between our podcast and like Pro Tri News is they're exact with their data and we're just kind of winging it.
But what I found interesting with like when you say that with Cam, right? It's that spirit of, like I am going to try and test my limit and really respect the sport and respect this thing, right? Like that came out in your conversation with Felix, right? Like you could feel that man's passion for everything. And so, this is my ham-handed transition into us talking about Roth.
Yeah.
Because, just unbelievable day, right? Like cannot underscore the pro performances out of everybody, right? Like you have Magnus Ditlev taking, 10 minutes off of Jan Frodeno's old record. You have Daniela Reef taking 11 minutes off of Chrissy Wellington. Like unbelievable performances.
Both of those individuals were there to witness their crucifixion of their records, passing medals on to their successors, which was pretty awesome.
And they were both so happy for.
Oh, Chrissy Wellington cried so much that day. It was really touching to see. It was cool to see her. I haven't seen her in person in like 10 years, and no, it wasn't. It hasn't been that long. It's been 7 years. 7 years since I've seen her in person. But we both kind of looked at each other. We were like, because when we were there together as athlete, photographer, good friends, coworkers. It was 12 years ago, and and to see the difference that had changed, not only in our own personal lives, both getting married, both having kids, and now we were there, kind of doing the same thing, but just a little bit different. It was fun.
And then you had Patrick Longa setting the marathon record.
All it takes is 50 millimeter shoes, man.
And being really, really good at running.
Oh yeah. The crazy part is if they would switch that marathon, he probably would have went 247, 248. Because the way that it is now, the last 5 miles is they've got like these really big rolling hills through cobblestone creeks. And, so there's just no way that he can go that fast on those at the end. And so, Felix, if you're looking for another way to break records next year, just flip that distance.
Leave it alone. Just leave it alone. And Ben Canute had a phenomenal day. 3rd place in his 2nd full distance race.
3rd place.
Really good.
Fastest American man ever at Roth. 7th fastest time ever at Roth. Yeah.
Outstanding day. On the women's side, Chelsea Sodaro was right there for a long period of time. And then.
Well, she was never. Define what do you mean right there?
Podium positioning.
Oh, yeah.
She was running 2nd for, a good 13, 14 miles of the marathon. And then.
I don't think so. She was in 3rd. Let me figure this out. She was in 3rd place at mile.
She passed
4.
Lisa.
She passed Lisa just past the 5K mark.
And then she was up in 2nd through mile 17, I think, is when literally she went from 2nd to non-existent on the tracker.
Yeah.
And on Instagram, she was saying just completely screwed up nutrition somewhere along the lines.
Yeah.
And pulled out there. But you had Ann Haug, like just another Uber runner, and then Laura Philippe, another excellent day.
Yeah.
But just
nobody was catching Reef though that day. No one was catching Magnus. It was.
The scary part is both of them, like they essentially ran the same race, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But they were at the front from the gun and never left.
Yeah.
And I mean, if Daniela's at the front when she swims, like look out.
Yeah.
Like close the book.
Yeah.
Because it's going to take, it would literally take someone doing to Daniela what Chris McCormack had to do to Craig Alexander in Kona in 2011 in order to beat her. Like, you got to get everybody all together to work with one another and pray you can separate from her.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you do that outside of, like, the only place where Daniela seems to not swim to her potential is Kona.
Yeah.
Like, you give her a wetsuit swim and just gone. Goodbye.
Yeah. Yeah. She had a phenomenal day out there. I mean, every single time. She just never looked uncomfortable, ever. I mean, and it wasn't like Kona hot, but it was hot.
Not cool.
Yeah, it was hot. And there was no wind on the bike whatsoever. And there was barely a breeze later in the marathon. Other than that, it was just sun all day. And
yeah, no, I mean, Ben looked really warm in the last 4 or 5 miles.
He said the last 5 miles of the race was the hardest thing he's ever had to endure in his life from a pain perspective. He reconsidered his long course
and a series of questionable life decisions.
Yeah, very, very much so. It was great racing. The guys obviously was, I mean, they were more exciting because there was more dynamics playing out in the men's race, right? Daniela was just kind of like I mean, the women's race, it was just like, okay, who's going to come in second, third, right? Because it just wasn't happening for anybody else.
No, I
But
mean, you had Sam Laidlow with Magnus for a long period of time, and then they got on the run. And, Sam, to his credit, toughed out a very difficult marathon for himself. And
he did. It showed a lot of maturity that he's starting to gain through this.
I mean, he's still recovering too, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah, for
guy
sure.
had a
Yeah.
liver infection, right? Like,
Yeah, and he was in good spirits post race. Obviously he was sad, but he didn't look emotionally beat up when I talked to him briefly at the volunteer party the day after. He, um, you worry about humans in situations like this where they get on the the big stage and they have some success, and everybody just puts so much fucking pressure on these individuals, right? At such a young age. And, you worry that they can't understand that, hey, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, and that's okay. So
right.
it was good to see that he was taking it pretty well. So yeah, that was good.
And I mean, let's not forget, like, guy was leading the Ironman World Championships for a long time.
Yeah, I was surprised that he didn't bike as much in the front this time around. He tend to, and I was busy on a motorcycle on major highways trying to get from point to point on the race.
So let's
But
talk
every
about
time
that
I
for a minute,
saw him, he was behind Magnus.
which is a smart place to be. Like,
Yeah, it
let's be
is.
honest. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
Magnus is a big dude.
yeah.
Like, it still can be like trying to draft off of the back of a 2x4 that's on a pickup truck, right? Like, you're not like it.
It's a good
When you
analogy.
get that draft, you're gonna get a nice benefit. But no, let's one of the things that was big in the lead up to this race was the change to media access throughout the day. And
Yeah,
so, like,
tightening up
how
safety
was
protocols.
how was your experience kind of going through everything on Sunday?
It was different. Um, it was, I can't say it was dramatically different for me.
Sure.
Just because I've been doing this for so long, and I've been in so many situations where courses are tight, motorcycle drivers didn't show up, and so I've shared motos before. I've not been given motos plenty of times. I've had access where you can be 2 feet away from any pro for as long as you want, but you know they definitely took it. I mean, they were taking it serious before the tragedy at Hamburg, um, but that was elevated because of that, which isn't a bad thing because we all know that everywhere moto access has kind of gotten out of control when it comes to non-endemic, non-true media. Every race had gotten to the point where, managers of athletes were on the back of motos, VIP were on the back of motos. It wasn't just an Ironman thing. It just happened more at Ironman events because there's more Ironman events.
I think there's more Ironman events, like sponsors, media, like
Yes, yeah,
less media, but like sponsors and
for
athlete
sure.
representatives and everything else,
Yeah,
like more likely to appear there because, as Felix talked about, like bonuses are more likely to be paid at Ironman brand events, right?
yeah,
Like, so.
yeah, and but the thing with Roth, and I want to get back to the moto second, for in a little bit, but I do want to illustrate this, and this is something that it dawned on me when I was coming back and we were headed to the finish line, and Roth can't happen anywhere else. That size of an event.
Yeah.
For triathlon cannot happen anywhere else. And it's not because of the organization per se. I mean, Felix, top notch, right? But let me finish. It's because the community all follows directions. They all follow the rules. So you have, for the most part, outside of like some of the international people that come over and they're, whether they're American or whatever, and they just like, I don't give a shit, I'm not going to follow this rule, right? 99.9% of the people out there, out of the 300,000 spectators are there, follow the rules. And they follow the rules because that's what they want to do. Not because they're afraid. Now, they're kind of like Cam Roth in regard to like they respect the event so much and they expect the process so much that they just follow the rules. Because I couldn't believe how many people were on the run course.
Yeah.
It reminded me of being at the Tour de France for some of the stages. But everyone was following the rules of where they could go, when to cross, when not to cross. And there was like not a single asshole to be seen trying to cross the road while somebody was running or anything like that. And it was the same with the bike course. Every single car out there that was stopped was just patiently waiting and watching the police officer to go right or to go left. Nobody was fucking honking. Nobody was irritated. It was a pure community event. And the reason that is, there's many, but the two reasons is, number one, it's a cultural thing that in America we have gotten away from, and that is we tend to, America, think that we're inconvenienced and that's a pain in the ass and screw you. We're going to do what we want because we're late for our whatever. And the other thing is it's been the same event for almost 40 years in the same town with the same exact united goal. And that is every single summer, there's this amazing event that happens in Roth and everybody knows about it and everybody's involved and everybody loves it. And if they don't love it anymore, they have moved out because there's no way that you can exist in that town during that week if you're irritated with it. Like, because it takes over the entire town. And that is one of the main reasons it makes it so special and unique. And it's also one of the reasons why you can't compare it to any other strategy when it comes to growing sport, because there's too many single variables that go into play to make that race what it is.
Well, I mean, what makes, it requires a community effort, right? And, there's the single side of the cultural difference, right? Like Germans are world renowned for following rules, right? Like there's an order of operations, right? Like, and that
I tried to get my moto
right?
driver to park 20 yards, like in a place where he wasn't supposed to park, right? And I didn't know that, but I was just like, just go park over there. And he's just like, no, I can't do that. And he parked like 20 feet in front of this other spot that I suggested him going to. And I was just like, man, like if I was on him, like, and it wasn't like I wasn't trying to get him to like park, or cross or whatever. It was just I saw a parking spot that I thought was safe. And he's like, no, I can do that. It's on the course. I was like, oh, okay. Like, cool.
But, large events like this require such community support and they have to be built into the fabric of their being, right?
Yeah.
Like it's why some of the world marathon majors work. Like Boston is Boston because the whole city supports that race and all of the surrounding communities along the line.
Yeah.
And that has been one of the bigger challenges that we've had as a sport with certain events, because we either lack the community support from the outset, and we haven't done a good enough job explaining what we're trying to do, or over time we've eroded that community support for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
And so, that's why, like, there's a model there, but all of the, like, you can't take that community somewhere else. Like, you have to build it.
You
And
do.
like that takes um a lot of heavy lifting. And I think that goes back to kind of the conversation we were having earlier about, like, there's going to be certain Ironman races that are their tent poles, and it's going to happen to be in the places where they've managed to create courses and create enough of a community to see a lot of the benefit. um they're not going to be the same crazy party atmosphere that Roth is, right? Like, you can only replicate that in one place and one place only, because there's too many other dynamic elements involved.
Yeah.
But at least from a getting a community to support an event, like, there's stuff that you can pick up from there.
Yeah, you totally can, when it comes to little things, right? For example, the finish line.
Yeah.
That's not a permanent stage. They built that stage, and the stage is huge. Guess what? That stage would never fit in Kona. Never.
No.
Guess what? We're not doing all the world championships at Kona anymore. So, we're getting away from, the little tiny island that is Kona and that size limitations that are there. Um, and so but kind of back to my experience from a media
Yeah.
perspective, everything was heightened. Access was even more restricted for me going in. When we agreed to go over to Roth, when we asked them if we could come, and they said they would give us access, and um, I knew from the beginning that I was going to have a moto, but I wasn't going to be allowed on course, right? So the moto is kind of like a media bus, right? So basically,
Sure.
I get lined up with the motorcycle driver, and we are on our own, following local traffic, and we're going to certain parts of the course. And we stayed away from all of the craziness. I wasn't going to go to Soldier or Solar Hill, because it's just, you're dealing with 40 or 50,000 people there. And so we always stayed away from there. But, but at the time, earlier in the year, I was supposed to have access on the run course. But that got taken away, because of safety concerns and eyeballs on things. And, and then also, they had like 4 times the amount of media applications this year, even after Hamburg.
Yeah.
And so they had to shift a lot. And, I remember being at the finish line, and I was kind of having like a pouty moment for myself, right? Because I was up in the rafters, and I was like, man, this kind of sucks. Like, I'm like looking down, I'm like, I kind of want to be down there. And then all of a sudden I like turned around, and there was like 150 photographers behind me who had like nosebleeds. And I had to kind of kick myself in the pants a little bit. Like, you whiny little baby, like, you're here at the biggest event in the world, and you're complaining that you're 5 feet away from the finish line instead of 2 feet away from the finish line. But it was awesome. Getting to the swim start was challenging.
Yep.
And getting to, I've got some feedback for Felix and his crew, because we all got caught, not being able to get to the start, when it came to the actual start of the race. I remember Steve and I, Chelsea's husband, we were just trying to figure out how to get to the start. And we kept going into roadblocks of like security, just being like, you can't go there. And like, okay, well, how do you get there? And like, you have to go this way. And it's just like, there's big fences everywhere. And just like, I just looked at him. I'm like, dude, I don't know what the hell to do. And he's just like, yeah, I don't know either. And we eventually, like, we had to walk out of transition all the way around. And barely got to the swim start. And so it took me like 20 minutes to go from the pro transition to make my way to the actual swim start itself. And
right.
I don't, and there's nothing that you could have done outside of like being personally walked through the day before from like the head security guy of like how to actually get around. Cause the athletes they got to certain checkpoints and it was just like, unless you're an athlete, you're not coming
No
through
dice.
here. Yeah. And so that was a little frustrating from that standpoint. But at the same time, it was just, you just kind of rolled with it. And, Steve's really funny. Chelsea's husband, he's a hoot, man. He was a really good dude to hang out with over the weekend. But it was awesome. It was
briefly,
great.
Other person who is low key hilarious is Jan Frodeno. Is like someone pay him a lot of money to do commentary when he finally like officially hangs it up, because he is so good.
Yeah. He was good. I was able to, because we had to go to certain spots. And there was a couple of times where I was literally standing in a field for like an hour and a half waiting for the pro men and the pro women to come through, because we got there like 30 minutes before. And then by the time I got to like the fifth or sixth woman to make sure that I got some sort of image of them, it had been a long time. And so I was just, I was on our website watching the live stream, listening to it. And he was comical, man. So yeah,
he's such a good like dry sense of humor that just fits in so well. But also his anecdotes, right? Like he was talking when Laidlow was really starting to struggle with cramping. You brought up like the hell of slowing down is nothing compared to the hell that you're going to put yourself through mentally right now. And it's just like that. Being able to condense that experience into just a single sentence is something else. And so, but I mean, that race does not end per se with the finish line. Like there's also that volunteer party.
Yeah. So you've got this finish line, right? And everyone that's been in the industry for a long time has been to, a 12 o'clock finish at Ironman. And if you've been lucky, you've been at the big one in Kona, and they're super special, right? They're, everyone's there. The pros come back. You see these people that have been out there suffering for, 16, 17 hours. Sometimes they don't even get to finish and they're coming in at 18 hours. And, and they do the same thing at Roth. But there's this huge stadium, and it's total Euro, man. I mean, it is a party. They've got this huge stage with fire coming out of it. They've got these amazing announcers, and it was just awesome to be there. And then they close it all down, and they have like this 30-minute laser show that like ends the night afterwards. It used to be the fireworks,
right.
But they turned it into the laser show for a lot of different reasons. Mostly I think it was because of the animals in the neighborhood. They just didn't like the fireworks, but
couldn't imagine why.
Yeah, but it was awesome. And then everyone goes home, and then at like 10 o'clock the next morning, they've got the awards ceremony. And then the following afternoon, they start this volunteer party. And, Ironman does the same thing. I think the difference is there's not as many people that show up. Well, usually volunteer parties are before the race. Roth does it after, and they have this huge dinner where all of the volunteers are invited to come back. And it is pasta again, right? It's like the pasta party. But then they get into like these raffles. So they've got all of these prizes, and everyone gets a raffle. And speaking of something funny, Steve, Chelsea's husband, was putting down pro names in the raffle, like Daniela Reef, and he wanted to see if their name was called. He's just like, man, I just hope that like somebody thinks that they actually put their name down for the raffle. But you get all the captains, the volunteer captains. They're like called up, they're recognized, and it's just really cool. All the pros are there, and then there was the VIP after party as well. And I don't know the name of the DJ that was there, but apparently it was one of the most famous DJs in Germany who raced the race last year. And then because he raced it and he loved it so much, he like contacted Felix and was like, I want to hold a party afterwards and I want to be the DJ. And we're not going to talk a lot about what happened at that party. But it was a good time. Yeah.
I was going to say, is that where the I'm going to bed, I'm too old for this came from?
Ben Canute totally and we both were like at like 11:30. We're like, yeah, we got to go. But yeah. But everybody else stayed around and they had a good time.
That's awesome. I mean, you're doing an awfully good job of convincing me to open up the wallet for next year. But
oh yeah, it's good. Well, we do have, and this is going to hit our home site here pretty soon, but we got to figure out how we do it. But we've got 2 slots that we're able to give away, and I think we're going to do it in a giveaway form. So I'm pretty stoked about that because these are. They're 2 guaranteed slots. You don't have to stand in line starting 24 hours before the race or before Monday drawing happens. You don't have to try to get in.
I was going to say
the 90 seconds
that they
sell out. Yeah, and you don't have to go race Tough Man. But we got to figure out how should we do that, Ryan? Should we do giveaway? What are we gonna do?
Off the top of my head, this sounds awfully like a tool that we've used for newsletter subscription drives in the past.
Ooh, so maybe. Maybe I need to make some phone calls too. I got to get some partners involved with this thing. We can make this a good one.
Yeah, no, like we'll definitely do something. But I mean, just between the live coverage and the experience that you've been talking about, like I've told Andrew Messick that Ironman Lake Placid is the best finish line that they have outside of Kona.
Mm-hmm.
And like just what I saw, what you've described, like that's why I do this sport. Like I have to experience that once.
Yeah.
And then I can say I'm done with 140.6 racing because this distance is so stupid.
It's a lot. Yeah. So I think I know what we're going to do with the entries.
Okay.
Number 1, you've got to be an American.
Oh, because Felix wants to drive that. Yep.
Well, we're also an American company. You got to be an American. I think we want to track their training. We're gonna touch base with these individuals over the course of the year. And we're going to do some stories on them.
Story. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we're going to go to Roth next year and we're going to cover them during the race.
I like it.
Yeah. That's what we're going to do.
A+ idea. Good job, Eric.
Yeah. It's going to be cool. Well, we're hitting our hour on the podcast here.
I know. I'm sure people are tired, just as tired as you are at this point.
Yeah, a little tired. What do we got coming up on Slowtwitch this week?
So this week we have a couple of product reviews upcoming. I finally have the Hoka Rocket X2 that I've been able to put some time in on. I'm actually going to do a little bit of a deeper dive on the Apple Watch Ultra that I picked up as part of trying to look at Engo. And also I have something that's probably not this week, but in the coming weeks, I have some Position 1 apparel review. Their run product line finally hit. And so being able to kind of take a look at that.
That's cool. So, I'm finishing up a Nix review, the sweat monitor system. I I had my first couple of runs with it in Germany. Really cool tool, like really, really cool. I've got to actually go buy a Garmin, or not a Garmin watch, an Apple Watch now though, because I'm not a huge fan of running with my phone, and you got to have like the app going. But apparently,
I literally disdain running with a phone. I'll ride with one, like back jersey pocket, no question asked. But like running, like that's 95% of the reason why I've got the Apple Watch Ultra, so that way like I can access my phone if I have to. But
but
very briefly,
go ahead.
To circle back, Ironman just put out a press release. 70.3 Mont Tremblant is going to be the same weekend as the full.
Oh, wow.
For those athletes. So they pushed it back.
When is, that's a couple months from now?
That is August the 20th.
Okay. All right.
So should be super interesting to see how they pull the logistics of the half and full off.
You heard it first here without hearing it first here.
Right.
Yes. Breaking news in 2 days from now.
We try.
Or 3 or 4 or never, depending on if you listen to our podcast.
But thank you for listening. Like that's always the key.
Thank you. Real quick too, big shout out to Felix and everybody at Roth for allowing us to come over and giving us the access that we needed. We had a lot of bike pictures up, a lot of bike picture profiles. I do want to say that I had a good time hanging out with Steve and Chelsea Sidoro after the race. She's in good spirits. She apparently on her, while she was waiting for the ambulance to show up, her true champion self came out by looking at her husband and saying, I think I can go race. What's coming up? I forget. Is it Frankfurt?
Yeah, it is Frankfurt.
Yeah. So she's like, DNF'd. She's on the ground, like totally crippled, like ambulance is getting ready.
When can I race again?
She literally looks up. She's just like, can we go to Frankfurt? She's just like, no, we are going home. So yeah. Good times. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Yes. All right. See you all later.
Thanks all.